Good evening. Welcome to day 18 of Reading Challenge. Chapter 34. When Bronsky went in When Bronsky went to Moscow from Petersburg, he had left his large set of rooms in Moscow to his friend and favorite comrade Petritsky. Petritsky was a young lieutenant, not particularly well connected and not merely not wealthy, but always hopelessly in debt. Towards evening, he was always drunk, and he had often been locked up after all sorts of ludicrous and disgraceful scandals. But he was a favorite both of his comrades and his superior officers. On arriving at 12 o'clock from the station at his flat, Vronsky saw at the outer door a hired carriage familiar to him. While still outside his own door, as he rang, he heard masculine laughter, the lisp of a feminine voice, and a Petritsky's voice. "If that's one of the villains, don't let him in." Vronsky told the servant not to announce him and slipped quietly into the first room. Barnes Shildon, a friend of Petritsky with a rosy little face and flaxen hair, resplendent, resplendent in a lilac satin gown, and filling the whole room like a canary with her Parisian chatter, sat at the round table making coffee. Petritsky in his overcoat and the cavalry captain Kamarowski in full uniform, probably just come from duty, were sitting each side of her. "Bravo, Vronsky!" shouted Petritsky, jumping up, scraping his hair. Our host himself Baroness some coffee for him out of the new coffee pot. "Why, we didn't expect you." "Hope you're satisfied with the ornament of your study," he said, indicating the Baroness. "You know each other, of the course." "I should think so," said Vronsky with a bright smile, pressing the Baroness' little hand. "What next? I'm an old friend." "You're home after a journey," said the Baroness. "So I'm flying. Oh, I'll be off this minute if I'm in the way." "You're home, wherever you are, Baroness," said Vronsky. "How do you do, Kamarowski?" he added, coldly shaking hands with Kamarowski. "Though you never know how to say such pretty things," said the Baroness, turning to Petritsky. "No, what's that for? After dinner I say things quite as good." "After dinner, there's no credit in that." "Well then, I will make you some coffee, so go and wash and get ready," said the Baroness, sitting down again, and anxiously turning the screw in the new coffee pot. "Pierre, give me the coffee," she said, addressing Petritsky, whom she called Pierre as a contraction of his surname. Making no secret of her relation with him. "I will put it in." "You'll spoil it." "No, I won't spoil it." "Well, and your wife," said the Baroness, suddenly interrupting Vronsky's conversation with his comrade. "We have been married to the... Have you brought your wife?" "No, Baroness. I was born in Bohemia, and a Bohemian I shall die." "So much the better, so much the better. Shake hands on it." And the Baroness, detaining Vronsky, began telling him with many jokes about her last new plans of life, asking his advice. He persisted in refusing to give me a divorce. "Well, what am I told? What am I to do?" He was her husband. "Now I want to begin a suit against him." "What do you advise, Kamarowski?" "Look after the coffee. It's boiling over. You see, I am engrossed with the business. I want a lawsuit because I must have my property. Do you understand the folly of it? That on the pretext of my being unfaithful to him," he said contemptuously, "he wants to get the benefit of my fortune." Vronsky heard with pleasure this light-hearted prattle of a pretty woman, agreed with her, gave her half-joking counsel, and altogether dropped at once into that tone habitual to him in talking to such women. In his Petersburg world, all people were divided into utterly opposed classes. One, the lower caste, vulgar, stupid, and above all ridiculous people who believed that one husband ought to live with the one wife whom he was lawfully married, that a girl should be innocent, a woman modest, and a man manly, self-controlled and strong, that one ought to bring up one's children, earn one's bread, and pay one's debts, and various similar absurdities. This was the class of old-fashioned and ridiculous people. But there was another class of people, the real people. To this class they all belonged, and in it the great thing was to be elegant, generous, plucky, gay, to abandon oneself without a blush to every passion and to laugh at everything else. For the first moment only, Vronsky was startled after the impression of a quite different world that he had brought with him from Moscow. But immediately, as though slipping his feet into old slippers, he dropped back into the light-hearted, pleasant world he was always lived in. The coffee was never really made. The coffee was never really made, but splattered over everyone and boiled away, doing just what was required of it, that is, providing much cause for much noise and laughter, and spoiling a costly rug and the Baroness gown. Well, now goodbye, or you will never get washed, and I shall have on my conscience the worst sin a gentleman can commit. So you would advise a knife to his throat, to be sure and manage that your hand may not be far from his lips. He will kiss your hand, and all will end satisfactorily, answered Bronsky. So, at the front case, and with a rustle of her skirts, she vanished. Kamarowski got up too, and Vronsky, not waiting for him to go, shook hands and went off to his dressing room. While he was washing, Petritsky described to him in brief outlines his position, as far as it had changed since Vronsky had left Petersburg. No money at all. His father said he wouldn't give him any and pay his debts. His tailor was trying to get him locked up, and another fellow too was threatening to get him locked up. The colonel of the regiment had announced that if the scandals did not cease, he would have to leave. As for the Baroness, he was sick to death of her, especially since she had taken to offering continually to lend him money. But he had found a girl. He would show her to Vronsky, a marvel exquisite in the strict Oriental style genre of the slave Rebecca, don't you know? He would had a row too with Bokosho and was going to send seconds to him. But of course it would come to nothing. Altogether everything was supremely amusing and jolly, and not letting his comrade enter into further details of his position, Petritsky proceeded to tell him all the interesting news. As he listened to Petritsky family stories in the familiar setting of the rooms he had spent the last 3 years in, Vronsky felt a delightful sense of coming back to the careless Petersburg life that he was used to. Impossible, he cried, letting down the pedal of the washing basin in which he had been sousing his healthy red neck. Impossible, he cried, at the news that Laura had flung over Fertioff and had made up to Milieu. And is he as stupid and pleased as ever? Well, and how's Buzlukov? Oh, there is a tale about Buzlukov. Buzlukov. Simply lovely, cried Pertisky. You know his weakness for balls, and he never misses a single court ball. He went to a big ball in a new helmet. Have you seen the new helmets? Very nice, light. Well, so he's standing. No, I said, do listen. I'm listening, answered Bronsky, rubbing himself with a rough towel. Up comes the Grand Duchess with some ambassador or other, and as ill luck would have it, she begins talking to him about the new helmets. The Grand Duchess positively wanted to show the new helmet to the ambassador. They see our friend standing there. Petritsky mimicked how he was standing with the helmet. The Grand Duchess asked him to give her the helmet. He doesn't give it to her. What do you think of it? Well, everyone's swinging at him. Nodding, frowning, give it to her, do. He doesn't give it to her. He's mute as a fish. Only picture it. Well, that's his name. Whatever he was tries to take the helmet from him, he won't give it up. He pulls it from him and it hands it to the Grand Duchess. Here, your highness, says he. Is the new helmet? She turned the helmet the other side up and just pictured it. Plop went a pear and sweetmeats out of it. 2 pounds of sweetmeats. He'd been storing them up, the darling. Vronsky burst into roars of laughter, and long afterwards, when she was talking of other things, he broke out into his unhealthy laugh, showing his strong, close rows of teeth when he thought of the helmet. Having heard all the news, Vronsky, with the assistance of his valet, got into his uniform and went off to report himself Indian. When he had done that, to drive to his brother's and to Betsy's and to pay several visits with a view to beginning to go into the society where he might meet Madame Karenina, as he always did in Petersburg. He left home not meaning to return till late at night. Part 2. Chapter 1. At the end of the winter, in the Shatsarpeki's house, a consultation was being held, which was to pronounce the state of Kitty's health and the measures to be taken to restore her failing strength. She had been ill, and as spring came on, she grew worse. The family doctor gave her cod liver oil, then iron, then nitrate of silver. But as the first and the second and the third were alike in doing no good, and as his advice when spring came was to go abroad, a celebrated physician was called. The celebrated physician, a very handsome man, still youngish, asked to examine the patient. He maintained with peculiar satisfaction, it seemed that maiden modesty is a mere relic of barbarism, and that nothing could be more natural than for a man still youngish to handle a young girl naked. He thought it's natural because he thought it natural because he did it every day and felt and thought as it seemed it to him. No harm as he did it, and consequently he considered modesty in the girl not merely as a relic of barbarism but also as an insult to himself. There was nothing for it but to submit, since although all the doctors had studied in the same school, had read the same books, and learned the same science, and though some people have said the celebrated doctor was a bad doctor in Prince's household and circle, it was for some reason accepted that this celebrated doctor alone had some special knowledge and that he alone could save Kitty. After a careful examination and sounding of the bewildered patient, dazed with shame, the celebrated doctor, having scrupulously scrupulously washed his hand, was standing in the drawing room talking to the prince. The prince frowned and coughed, listening to the doctor as a man who had seen something of life and neither a fool nor an invalid. He had no faith in medicine and in his heart was furious at the whole phrase, especially as he was perhaps the only one who fully comprehended the cause of Kitty's illness. Considered blockhead, he thought as he listened to the celebrated doctor's chatter about his daughter's symptoms. The doctor was meantime with difficulty restraining the expression of his contempt for this old gentleman, and with the difficulty con- condescending to the level of his intelligence. He perceived that it was no good talking to the old man, and that he principal person in the house was the mother. Before her, he decided to scatter his pearls. At that instant, the princess came into the drawing room with the family doctor. The prince withdrew, trying not to show how ridiculous he thought the whole performance. The princess was distracted and did not know what to do. She felt she had sinned against Kitty. Well, doctor, decide our fate, said the princess. Tell me everything. Is there hope? She meant to say, but her lips quivered, and she could not utter the question. Well, doctor, immediately, princess, I will talk it over with my colleague, and then I will have the honor of laying my opinion before you. So we had better leave you as you please. The princess went out with a sigh. When the doctor when the doctors were left alone, the family doctor began timidly explaining his opinion that there was a commencement of the tuberculosis trouble, but and so on. The celebrated doctor listened to him, and in the middle of his sentence looked at his big gold watch. Yes, said he, but the family doctor respectfully ceased in the middle of his observation. The commencement of the tuberculosis process we were not, as you are aware, able to define till there are cavities. There is nothing defined. There is nothing definite, but we may suspect it, and there are indications: malnutrition, nervous excitability, and so on. The question stands thus: in presence of indications of tuberculosis process, what is to be done in maintaining nutrition? But you know, there are always moral spiritual causes at the back in these cases. The family doctor permitted himself to interpolate with a subtle smile. Yes, that's an understood thing, responded the celebrated physician, again glancing at his watch. Beg pardon. Is the Yoski Bridge not Yoski Bridge done yet, or shall I have to drive around? He asked. Oh, it is. Oh well, then I can do it in 20 minutes. So we were saying the problem may be put thus: to maintain nutrition and to give tone to the nerves. The one is in close connection with the other. One must attack both sides at once. And how about a tour abroad? Asked the family doctor. Have no liking for foreign tools and taken out if there is an early stage of tuberculous process of which we cannot be certain a foreign tool will be of no use. What is wanted is mean of improving the nutrition and not for lowering it. And the celebrated doctor expounded his plan of treatment with the sodden waters and remedy obviously prescribed primarily on the ground that they could do no harm. The family doctor listened attentively and respectfully, but in favor of foreign travel, I would urge the change of habits, the removal from conditions, calling up, reminiscence, and then the mother wishes it, he added. Oh, well, in that case, to be sure, let them go. Only those German quacks are mischievous. They ought to be persuaded. Well, let them go then. He glanced once more at his watch. Oh, time's up already. And he went to the doctor. That celebrated doctor announced to the princess a feeling of what was due from him dictated his doing so. That he ought to see the patient once more. What? Another examination? Cried the mother with horror. Oh no, only a few details, princess. Come this way. And the mother, accompanied by the doctor, went into the drawing room to Kitty. Wasted and flushed, with a peculiar glitter in her eyes, left there by the agony of shame she had been put through. Kitty stood in middle of the room. When the doctor came in, she flushed crimson and her eyes filled with tears. All her illness and treatment struck her as a thing so stupid, ludicrous even. Doctoring her seemed to her as absurd as putting together the piece of a broken vase. Her heart was broken. Why would they try to cure her with pills and powders? But she could not grieve her mother, especially as her mother considered herself to blame. May I trouble you to sit down, princess? The celebrated doctor said to her. He sat down with a smile, facing her, felt her pulse, and again began asking her tiresome questions. She answered him, and all at once got furious. Excuse me, doctor, but there is really no object in this. This is the third time you have asked me the same thing. The celebrated doctor did not take offense. Nervous irritably, he said to the princess when Kitty had left the room. However, I had finished. And the doctor began scientifically explaining to the princess, as an exceptionally intelligent woman, the condition of the young princess and concluded by insisting on drinking of the waters, which were certainly harmless. At the question, should they go abroad, the doctor plunged into deep meditation as though resolving a weighty problem. Finally, his decision was pronounced. They were to go abroad, but to put no faith in foreign quacks and to apply to him in any need. It seemed as though some piece of good fortune had come to pass after the doctor had gone. The mother was much more cheerful when she went back to her doctor, and Kitty pretended to be more cheerful. She had often, almost always, to be pretending now. Really, I'm quite well, Mamma. But if you want to go abroad, let's go, she said. And trying to appear interested in the proposal too, she began talking of the preparation of the journey. Thanks for the day. We'll see tomorrow.